It actually gives me very great pleasure to introduce Professor Alison Sheridan. Professor Sheridan is the Acting Pro Vice-Chancellor Academic at the University of New England. Prior to this role, she held the position of Head of the UNE Business School, and it was in that role she was a member of the BVET Associate Degree of Accounting Project Steering Committee. She has been an academic for over 25 years and is widely published in the fields of gender and management, human resource management and management education. She's currently the Director of the UNE Partnerships and the Community Mutual Group, a mutual financial institution with more than $1 billion in assets. In her role as PVCA, she oversees the Student Support Services units at UNE, as well as academic quality and assurance. Professor Sheridan will discuss the research issues that arise from current knowledge about students from disadvantaged backgrounds and strategies that support their motivation, engagement and connectedness. Her session is entitled Strategies that Support Student Motivation, Engagement and Connectedness. Could you please join with me in welcoming Professor Sheridan?
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here today. I am at the end of a cough, though, so if I get overwhelmed, I hope you'll forgive me through the session. Well, yes, the invitation to be here had flowed from my involvement with the steering committee on the on working on the associate degree in accounting. It was a great project that it's great to see it come to fruition, and it spoke, as we developed it, it was always with the view that we should be using this as a learning experience too, and how do we create opportunities to research what we're doing as we're doing it. And I see this event as an important dimension of that part of the project. So in my in my presentation, I sincerely have to acknowledge the great work that my team of Julie Godwin, Nola Holmes and Diane Kelton-Chambers have had in helping me prepare for this, because these three colleagues are in fact our first year advisors at the University of New England, and they play an important role in supporting students transitioning into university. So my background has been as an academic. I taught in the business school I taught in agricultural economics and then in the business school for many years, and then became head of the school. And over that time, I've seen the importance of the support mechanisms in place early on in the period. When I started teaching 26 years ago, there weren't such things as first year advisors. Everybody just sort of started their university studies and were expected to know exactly how to get on. We have, identified that that's not necessarily everybody's experience, that they know exactly how to navigate the space. And so about 9 years ago at the University of New England, we introduced our first year advisors. And, I've worked with Nola Holmes particularly. She looks after the business and law students, and the difference that role has played in our students' sense of understanding what's going on around them has been from an academic and a head of school's perspective a really an amazing shift. So what I'm going to be doing with you today is sharing with you some of their insights about what they've learned through their experiences, and they are in fact active scholars themselves. They reflect on their practice and write about that too. So Julie, Nola and Di, as I'm saying, have been a very important part of this presentation. Now, I just thought I'd give you a little bit of background about the University of New England, because not everybody is familiar with it. We're a small university. We're one of about the only university in Australia now that is a single campus university. We're based in Armidale, halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. And, we were originally a college of the University of Sydney. We were set up as a local pastoral family bequested the land and the homestead. So the beautiful building of Bullamimba was one of the original homesteads in the region and is the centre of our university. And we, from the outset, we have serviced both students on campus and off campus. We're a distance provider before distance provision was, really very common. And so we've always worked with students away from us. And I will say, it has been, part of the profile of UNE students is that our student cohort is very diverse. Of our 21,000 students, 5,000 are on campus, 16,000 are located off campus, and it's a very diverse student population. And for us, the traditional pathway of high school to university isn't the norm. Our student cohort has come from many different pathways. We enter, while there is, some small proportion of our students who enter a traditional, enter their first year of university coming straight out of high school based on their 8R and entering their programs. The majority of our students don't come that way. They are people who have, may well not have performed well in school, weren't engaged by school, have worked for many years and have then identified that they do want to, pursue careers. We have students who come through, not through the 8R version of the school, but because they have, often come from quite disadvantaged backgrounds, they come through principal's recommendations, where the principal is able to provide supporting evidence to the university that these students, while they might not have performed well under those sort of, those sorts of standard tests, have the potential to do well. And we also have existing TAFE pathways for many of our qualifications. But those pathways haven't delivered to this point the sorts of we haven't seen the progression of students through the pathways as much as we would have liked, as both TAFE or the university would have liked. We believe that there have been the sorts of barriers students have faced in making the transition have really been a disincentive to progress. And so, seeing the sorts of, initiatives being taken through the associate degree programs, I think is exactly the sort of change we need to see happen to see our students go higher. Because, what we have learned through the many years of working with our diverse student population is that there's a continuum of challenge for our students as they adjust to university environment. And it's interesting that it's not just our mature age students who have to adjust. It's not just our TAFE pathway students who have to adjust. It's also students who've come from a high school background adjusting to university. And so what we've worked at doing and we see has been critical to the retention of those students has been the sorts of supportive learning environment initiatives that we've put in place, and I really do see our first year advisors and the work they do with our students as a fundamental part of this. I have already acknowledged their great contribution to this presentation. So our first year advisors now work with our students, and importantly they work with academic staff to help our academic staff understand the challenges that our students are facing, and the professional staff, to develop, initiate and implement strategies to facilitate that transition to tertiary learning. And what they do has varies across the disciplines. Each of them is actually matched to different discipline groups because depending on the nature of the program the student is enrolled in and depending on their particular backgrounds, the sorts of support, the sorts of activities have to recognise that difference. I did also want to note here that we've, along with the associate degree in accounting that we've worked with TAFE New South Wales for the last 3 years in working on, we've also been working with TAFE the New England Institute of TAFE, and last week I was at the launch of our dual sector degrees, the Bachelor of Agri-Food Systems, the Bachelor of Health Practice and the Bachelor of Community Services, where we're integrating the TAFE and the university programs in the one vehicle. And this was a great, it was a particularly important in our region, though, that suite of programs in terms of the sorts of professional skills that we see our region needing and calling out for, that we've been able to work through the highly supportive space of the TAFE programs with the university programs to deliver single degrees for it is something that we're really proud of, and we think will make a difference to our region, and that our students won't need to go away from the region for those sorts of programs too. So with respect to the associate degree of accounting, where the branding of go higher is, the promise of it is that, through this innovative model, it's a supportive learning environment where you're learning in small classes and enjoying a high level of direct contact with academic staff in the TAFE environment, and you'll develop academic skills required for successful study at TAFE and university. So that's our aim, and it's how we're going to do that is really the challenge that we're all facing. Making that transition as easy as possible to ensure that we retain the students and they complete, so that they're learning in a tertiary environment and they're graduates from a tertiary environment is what we're seeking to do. So in terms of bridging the different environments, these sorts of diagrams are very familiar to you all in terms of looking, let's, in very simple terms, try and break down what, where the barriers may be. And if we look at the different, the different environments in which TAFE and the university are operating and what they offer, it's I think fair to say that TAFE has a higher touch model, which is an important dimension to the provision of the learning environment, and that universities tend to assume more independent learning, and that shapes the nature of the activities. TAFE, the focus is on learning through work and learning at work, and Peter made reference to the importance of that to employers. It is whereas at university, it's interesting that the focus we tend to have is on frameworks for analysing and solving problems in a field of study, and that's an important dimension. But I can tell you, as a head of a business school who goes around and sees many of the accounting firms in the region, they're not, the UNE graduates are not nearly as well thought of as being work ready as the TAFE graduates are. So how we this bundling, the opportunity that this associate degree in accounting through to the bachelor's degree actually offers us in terms of graduates who are work ready and able to engage with the disciplinary frameworks is actually a great achievement. And Belinda Prink from the New England Institute of TAFE and I did a sort of travelling roadshow to talk to employers about the prospects of this sort of degree in our region, and they loved it. They were just, really saying that combination, because the criticism of university graduates, and it's not just UNE, I've got to be clear about that, it's all university accounting graduates, are not as work ready, and they feel that they have to do so much work with them in the workplace, whereas the students that they've had through TAFE, they know exactly what to do. So they have the practical skills that the employers are looking for. So this combination, I think, offers us a great opportunity. And of course then the experience of the students in terms of the assessment focus, the competency-based assessment focus of TAFE, in comparison to what tends to happen in universities is the conceptual or theoretical focus of assessment. Now, universities have tried, I think, and achieved lots of improvement. Tried to improve and achieved improvement in making their graduates more work ready. But the opportunities for us to focus on the complementary skills of the TAFE experience and the university experience in delivering that further is something that I think augurs well for us here. particularly, as I said, I was in the business school and it was in the faculty of the professions, particularly in the professional skills area. So this model of 2 years of TAFE with and a year of university, but us recognising the importance of an overlapping experience, so that they're not in the. I would say that from my observation of the paths from the diploma or the advanced diploma into the second half of a degree, or second year, or into the second half of a second year of a degree with the advanced diploma, that there was a gap. There's a gap there. What this model is aiming to do is that gap is not experienced. It shouldn't be experienced. We should be preparing them through those 2 years to just easily transition into that final year. But something that I think we need to be aware of, and perhaps think about how we do this in our in our discussions this afternoon, is, of course, it mightn't flow in a sequential period. People may well finish the associate degree, have a lot, actually they're work ready, they're out there working, and they can have quite a long period before rejoining the final year of the degree. We need to be thinking about those too, as it's not just that it's it will be a sequential, a linear experience for all of our students too. We need to be thinking how we're going to be preparing them for that, for whenever they may want to complete that final part of the degree. So in terms of transitioning from vocational education to and training to university, well, what do we know already? I mean, Peter made this point earlier. That students have found the transition difficult. The models that we've had previously haven't necessarily prepared them well for moving seamlessly through the various levels of the philosophy of the Australian qualifications framework is that students should be able to meet, should be able to flow through through the different levels. From our own experience, we often, and recognising the research of others, including Watson, is that academic literacy requirements continue to be a major challenge for our students. And so how do we ensure that their preparation through the associate degree makes the shift into their final year of the degree as easy as possible for them. And what we also know is that when it's a collaborative effort between VET providers and universities that transition is most likely to be successful. So this project has been about collaboration between the universities and TAFE, and how we can, how do we take that further is I think the point of our research endeavours too. So, if we're thinking about the goals of this, is that we want to be preparing students to enter university socialised within the academic environment. And from what our research and the experience of my first year advisors team has clearly highlighted, is that we need to foster a sense of belonging, and that there is that moving from the TAFE experience into the university experience is not about your difference, it's about valuing what you're bringing into the role. And what we would hope to be able to do through this process is have students in a position of being ready and confident to engage with students whose first 2 years have been within the university. That these are different pathways to that final year of the undergraduate degree, the third year of the undergraduate degree. Different pathways shouldn't, we don't want there to be a sense of hierarchy amongst those who've gone one pathway and those who've gone another. And so actually reflecting on how we can make that space work from a university perspective is something that I think is worthy of research too. Something that the first year advisors have pointed to is, I said that they work with academic staff as well. It's not just working with the students in sort of, you know, they're available to students who when we first actually implemented the first year advisors team 9 years ago, it was assuming that who they were servicing were students entering year one of university. Now, in a business school, we have a number of international partnerships where students are, in fact, models not unlike the associate degree, bachelor's degree model, in that we work with universities in China where their students do the first half of their degree in China and then come on campus to complete the second half of their degree. So they're entering the second half of the second year of their degree. They're not first year students, but they're their first year at the university. They experience as much confusion and dislocation as somebody entering year one of university. And so what we did, we broadened their scope. So our first year advisors it's not their focus is on your first year at the University of New England, and they provide those supportive activities. Now, some of those can be, we've put in there's academic literacy activities that are run through library services, through the academic skills office. It's the connection of all of these services, and that's in fact one of the key roles the first year advisors play, is making visible to our students all of the support mechanisms that are in place. Because if there's no point having them if people aren't aware of what they can access. And websites are wonderful things, but they often are not necessarily the best mode of communicating that sort of activity. So the personal touch of our first year advisors, working with students who are coming into UNE for the first time, and they identify and work with the students about perhaps what their needs are, but also importantly, and this is how I got onto this point, was they work with the academic staff who are delivering or teaching the students. Because for many of our academic staff, they've not, especially if they're teaching in that third year of the university, they're assuming that the students have had this, all of the foundation knowledge and the exposure to all of the academic skills, literacy, etc., which were embedded in those first year units at UNE. They've assumed that knowledge, and they don't think about how they may need to reinforce that knowledge through their own work. So, the first year advisors, very diplomatically, very consciously work with the academic staff around that as well. But one of the points that they would point to is, in fact, here is an opportunity to enhance the experience. That third year of in this case, in the particular vehicle we're talking, that I'm most familiar with is the associate degree in accounting through the bachelor's in commerce accounting, is that the experience that the TAFE students have, the practical experience, should be capitalised on in those final units in which the students who've come through the university pathways have in fact not had that same experience, that have been more focused on the theoretical and conceptual rather than the learning at work in a work environment focus. So our first year advisors were talking about that is an opportunity because when somebody's experience is valued, it does motivate. It does help create a sense of belonging, and it does connect those. How we could leverage that, the different pathway into the third year to then benefit our students who have come through the 3 years at 2 years at university and into the third year is something I think is a great opportunity for us. So we want to be, and in preparing our students to be ready and confident to engage with their colleagues is in that final year at university is something that I think we really need to attend to closely. Inducted to the community of subjects. So, in preparing these students to move between the associate degree and at TAFE and at university, what preparation we are embedding in those earlier units to enable them to see and to understand what it will look like in university is something I think is, there's clear evidence that will lead to less of the disjunctures that we have seen in many of the pathways where we just assume the student could work that stuff out themselves. Now, I have to acknowledge too that of course there have been many students who have worked that stuff out themselves, but they, they're competent individuals who've navigated that space well, and in fact, through what an initiative that we took in the New England area about 4 years ago was we created what we called the New England Business Educators Network, and it was at the initiative of of Nola Holmes, our first year advisor in the economics and business domain, who was observing that really even high school students really didn't know what economics or business would look like in a university, and that she knew that from her previous work with TAFE that was also an issue for students, that they didn't many TAFE students didn't know what it would look like in a university. So this network, which was, we tried to do, we've had a couple of meetings, where we're trying to exchange information about what we're doing, so that each of the different parties better understands what each other does. So through the New England Business Educators Network, I've known about these great students who've passed through from TAFE into university and have ended up being, the prize-winning students. So some do navigate the space well, but there is a lot that we lose, that they either don't even consider the prospect of university, or they start and they feel so lost that they can't continue. How do we put in place the sorts of flags, the early indicators that they are at risk? That's something that I think we need to be looking at from the university perspective. It's interesting because, as I said, I explained to you about the international pathways that we have, where the Chinese students come through into our programs. Under the ESOS Act, we're required to have in place early flags about early warning, about at-risk students. We don't do that. We're not required to do that for our domestic students, and yet we have UNE, as I said, particularly because of our diverse student range, we do have a lot of at-risk students that, attending to those early indicators of where students are struggling, how to put in place those support mechanisms. We've done it through our first year advisors, and we do it through the students who alert us to their concerns, and we also ask the academic staff to be identifying those. We require our academic staff to identify the international students, but we don't require it of our domestic students. So I think that's actually an interesting area we could explore further. So one of the areas I would like to flag too is, as I said, 80% of our students are located off campus. So if you're transitioning from a high touch face-to-face environment through the first 2 years with TAFE, if these students were considering joining UNE's program, well, it is unlikely they're going to move to Armidale if they're located all over. So the option, they're an option. There are the other universities have the face-to-face options for them. But a particular challenge will be if they've been in a face-to-face environment, and I know there's blended learning within TAFE, but if they then opt for completing that final year in as they're working, which is not given they will be work ready, the associate degree has prepared them for careers. They could be completing the degree out by distance, and in that space, self-directed learning is even more important. So what preparation that we would be embedding in in their experience through the associate degree of the prospect of self-directed learning through an online mode of completing their final year is also something I think we could be looking more closely at. Because the move from small TAFE classes and one-on-one interaction to being replaced by sort of online forums, online interaction, emails and readings is something that it is a different experience that we should be looking at how to prepare our students for. So in effect, I think there's quite a lot of interesting research opportunities. So I'm sort of flagging some ideas that we could be exploring further this afternoon. Is tracking these students and assessing their understanding of the transition. What do they think works best? What do the staff think works best? Because the insights from both the TAFE and the university staff are, of course, very important to our understanding of the experience, our students' experience. And there's opportunities to look at how they're performing across the different systems and analysing critical points along that journey, identifying and using our learning management system analytics to be able to engage with that from an evidence perspective, and certainly involving staff and students and staff in the design of a supportive learning environment that encourages motivation, provides a sense of connectedness and promotes engagement will be critical to where we're to our research framing. I know that there's lots of the opportunities for further through the further presentations today to be exploring particular points, and I note that the Charles Sturt team are looking at that open education resources, using the open education resources space to help prepare students is, I think there's a great opportunity there. But I also think we need to be looking at what we're doing in our practice, both within the units that are being taught through TAFE and within the units that are being delivered through the universities, because I think it's understanding and valuing the different pathways and recognising how they could be enriching each other is something that this model has I think great potential for moving us into the being able to deliver, as I said, that we've got our learners in a tertiary environment and we want them to be graduates from a tertiary environment. And here is I'm very proud of Armidale's beautiful campus. so this was the graduate, this is one of our graduation photos. But it is that moving through from an associate degree, completing the bachelor, in this, the project that we've worked on specifically was the Bachelor of Associate Degree in Accounting, Bachelor of Commerce Accounting, that I know we will be preparing, the graduates from that program, as I said, offer really important outcomes for for employers in our region, in a way that is really exciting, that we can have the best of both of our systems, and our graduates from these programs will be able to demonstrate that their strengths as accountants who actually know how to read, who know how to do the profit and loss statement easily. So thank you very much. Sure, that's all.
We've just got a couple of minutes. I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions of Professor Sheridan.
The first year advisors, are they staff or are they?
Yes, they are. They are employed by. Their reporting line is through to the Pro Vice Chancellor Academic. They work. They're full-time positions, although some of them have chosen to be to work to work more flexibly at a 0.8 position. So we have 4 of them across the university. They then, depending on the nature of the student cohorts that they're working with, will also have engaged. I know in the sciences, for instance, and sciences have put in place a peer tutoring program, particularly in first year chemistry, first year biology, first year mathematics, where you are drawing on stronger students from later years to help support the students, and we pay them for that work as well. But they are the first year advisors are positions, academic positions. They're recognised as they're not professional staff, they're academic staff, and that's, as I said, they are reflecting on their practice and engaging with scholarship around their practice as well. Sorry. Yes, yeah.
You talked about visible support services, visible student support services. How do you actually do that? Did you aggregate the services in one location? I know I saw one of your slides up there with like a beautiful student central.
Well, that was the that's been the sort of shift that has happened over the last few years. Is they were in isolation. The library has now become a really central repository of those services, and in fact, one of the great initiatives that we launched, funded through HEP funding, was the first year experience space in the library, where it really is about trying to create that community of students, but not, and I want to say that, not as being entering that 100 level units, but if anybody who is in their first year at university, it's a space there. So the library has become, the ground floor of the library has gone from being, when I first started at university, you'd have the old boffins there reading the newspapers and they had the time to walk up and read the newspapers every day. That doesn't happen anymore. It's a space where it's a really engaging space for students can get computer assistance in one part, student assist is in another part, and then the academic skills offices there too. They're also exploring at the moment, working with Sport UNE. Sport UNE has a large complex, and it's actually fantastic complex relative to the student numbers that we have on campus. And how can we use some of that? And it's located fairly close to the colleges. But how do we use that sort of social space better to create learning? Spaces where students can come for learning support without having to book in a half-hour session with an academic skills officer. That's the model that we've had, and what we're trying to explore here is saying, okay, what about using the coffee space in Sport UNE and say, okay, our academic skills officers will be there from 2 till 4 on 3 days a week. Come and join us if you want it, and have themes around academic literacy that they might work with. So rather than making it it's a supportive mechanism, but it's not about, it's inefficient working one-on-one with individual students and on half-hour slots, when in fact they're common problems that could be looked at in a way that's going to engage the student more and not feel like I'm the only one who's struggling with this. So we've got there's great ideas, and that's the Learning Innovation Hub who's thinking through that space. So shifting what was quite prescribed individual interaction to address deficits, to saying these are common learning challenges, and how can we put in place the sorts of mechanisms that you want to come and be part of it too, not taking yourself up to a little office in one of the buildings where you get your 1.5 hour, because that's all the resources could deal with. To help address a more systemic issue was really inefficient. So those things are changing. Sorry, there was a question there and then one there. Sorry.
Do you have
any advice for us in assisting our students with their transition with limited funding?
The limited funding is, is what's challenging us all. It is. I think this afternoon's session about the open education, I'm thinking Charles Sturt have the answer. No, but I do think there's got to be a sense of, how do we provide well-designed resources that can be accessed independently by the students, but also drawn on and worked in a common space as well. I think there's opportunities for that, but we are all struggling. Within our institution, the Academic Skills Office they won awards for what was called Tune Up. Tune Up was a set of academic literacy skills, and students could take themselves through it. And that was really, really innovative stuff. 15 years ago. But you actually have to keep up with the technology too, and so the old PDFs of how do you cite references is not actually how I don't think is really engaging with students now. And so actually working with online diagnostics that can help you work out where your gap is and take you directly to where the support mechanism may well be best addressed are some ways to use the technology better to support the individual learning as well. But we're a poor university too, so resources are a constant struggle for us. Sorry. Thanks.
I actually wanted to ask you a question, but also to comment on what we've just been talking about. One of the things we've been doing actually is working with one of our university partners where students on their associate degree programs who are learning in a distance mode and are living remotely are actually able to access university support for their associate degree through our TAFE campus libraries. And we're working on a sort of solution.
So they're able. So you don't have to provide. It can in preparation for the next stage. You can access it.
But also, once they've moved to university, they have associate TAFE students, so
they can access your resource.
TAFE campus, and that's a new initiative, but that's certainly making a difference.
So where's your?
North Coast.
You're in the North Coast, because we've had the UNE's access centres have been with the New England, have been TAFE campuses, and it's exactly that sense. There is a physical space for them to come to, in the northwest of New South Wales, Moree, Narrabri, etc. And this is where Belinda and I had gone round to the employers, and they were saying that they want the students to stay in the town. The students want to stay in the town, and TAFE has the facilities there to be able to do it. So how we can better, so that's a good model.
Also, a better justification for TAFE continuing to have those campuses is when funding is tight. So that's been useful. But the question I wanted to ask was, we've been talking about associate degree programs, and I wondered if you had any comment about integrated programs, where the student simultaneously learns.
Well, this is the 3 degrees that I said we launched formally. They actually had their first intake in teaching period 1 of this year. There were 3 integrated programs. So the Bachelor of Agri-Food Systems, the Bachelor of Health Practice, and the Bachelor of Bachelor of Community Services. So Bachelor of Health Practice and the Bachelor of Community Services. So in the in the environmental and rural science area, we had the agri-food systems working, and that model has the students simultaneously enrolled in a TAFE, and in fact, it's flexible. They can be doing a TAFE unit at the same time as a university unit, or they could do all their TAFE. It's up to the student and their interest about how they mix and match the units. But it is in fact, that degree. So it's just started. I know that the head of the School of Environmental and Rural Sciences thinks this is exactly the way to go in the agriculture. He can see great sort of scope in that degree, because the opportunity to have much more hands-on stuff while you're doing it, particularly in agriculture, where the concepts are great, but actually you've got to be able to do the stuff too. He's seeing this as a great opportunity. So we haven't yet seen out, the first. We haven't seen the grades of the, in the first, and we can't even really say yet what patterns the students are doing in it. But they are generally working, and they will be doing this degree part-time, and they will be able to mix and match. Now, getting this, one of the degrees has them enrolled at UNE and able to be choosing the TAFE and the UNE units together. The other has the two systems. The students are enrolled in TAFE and the students are enrolled in UNE. Because actually working through the integration of the systems is as we all know, is a major challenge. But it is being done in one of the degrees. So it'll take a bit of time to see how that actually is, the outcome. But I know that both, and certainly the School of Health is also really excited about the prospect. Sorry.
When you've got integrated classes, is there can you share with us something about how teachers might need to change their pedagogy?
Well, this is where Julie Godwin has this idea, and her view was that drawing upon TAFE student skills-based expertise to augment the more conceptual understandings is how she could see it being done in the universities. So, especially if you're going, by the time you get into the third year of, sorry, I haven't done an accounting degree, so it sounds like, I'm just making these assumptions about accounting. I did an economics degree, mine was agricultural economics. But, my understanding from the discussions I have with my staff and when I look at the units is they're much more theoretically focused. And actually getting it down to what does that mean in practice is where we think that's the opportunity to really value the TAFE experience coming in there to help enrich that process. Particularly as for many of our the reality is for many of our students they're actually in the workplace. They've when they're reflecting on the. But our third year on campus students have no idea. So how do we take that practical knowledge and link it to the conceptual understanding? I think that's where the academic staff would need to do a bit of work to do that. So, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Could you just join with me in thanking Professor Sheridan?